Today is the first day of density data collection. You will collect the density data for 4 solids and 2 liquids. Just a reminder that you are going to use the glassware available to you in the tray to play the game, Does It Fit? If whatever you're determining the density of can only fit into a beaker, remember that beakers cannot be read to any decimal places. You should not have any decimal places when using a beaker to measure volume. If you happen to use a graduated cylinder, a 10 milliliter graduated cylinder can be read to the hundredths place, while 25 and 100 milliliter graduated cylinders can only be read to the tenths place. The data you're going to collect is the mass and volume for these different substances. The mass and volume that you will use to calculate the density are bold in the data table, so make sure to use the correct data to calculate the density. At the bottom of your data table, you will notice you have to use the dry method or the Caliper method for determining the density of the 2 different solids. What the heck is a caliper? Well, a caliper is a very accurate measuring device that is going to help you in the lab determine the dimensions of the objects, and then you're going to use equations to be able to find the volume of the object in your tray. So the main purpose of this video is to actually teach you how to read a caliper. One note you might want to jot down is that these calipers that you will use in the lab can be read to the hundredths place or 2 decimal places. A caliper will have a little window, and you're going to use the markings inside of that window to determine what the measurement is of the substance you're testing. First off, we need to know how to get the digits in the value that we're measuring. Well, these larger numbers here, the larger lines, those are the digits for the ones place. So those markings are going to allow you to find your ones place. The smaller markings in between these larger lines, those are the markings that will allow you to find the second digit or the tenths place. And then the even smaller markings that are on the window that slides on the caliper, those are the markings that are going to allow you to find your third digit or the hundredths place. So let's look at an example here. When reading a caliper, you want to look at this first line that's on the window that slides. That's like your reference line. And to start with, we want to see which ones placeholder it is in between. So it's pretty obvious to see that reference line is in between 2 and 3, which means the first digit in our value is a 2. Now we're going to use that reference line again, and we're going to see how it is positioned between the tenths place markings above it. And you can see that it is between 0.4 and 0.5. It is after 0.4 and before 0.5. So that second digit, the tenths place digit, is going to be a 4. To determine the hundredths place digits, you're going to look to see which of the markings on the window that slides on the caliper line up with the line above it. So, for example, you can see that the reference line here, which would be a 0, is a little offset compared to the line above it. The next one, which would be a 1, is also offset. But this next one is lined up pretty well, because if you keep going here, this one is a little offset, and then the rest of them you can tell are very offset compared to the lines above them. So this is the marking that lines up the best with the line above it on the fixed ruler. This happens to be related to a 2. The reference line is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3, and so on all the way down the line. So this tells us that our hundredths place digit is a 2. The number we should get with this caliper reading is 2.42 centimeters. Reading a caliper is so easy, an 8-year-old can do it. So Ike's going to show you how to read this next caliper reading. So here's your reference line, Ike. It's between 3 and 4, so what would our first digit be?
3.
Very good. Okay, so now use your reference line. Which tenths place marking is it between?
8 and 9.
Yep, there's 0.8 and 0.9. So it's after the 8 and before the 9. So what's the next digit?
8.
Very good. Now we got to find the marking on the window that slides that lines up with the line above it. Which one is it?
That one.
Yeah, I agree, that one. So what number would that be?
4.
That would be a 4. So the measurement that Ike just made is?
3.84.
Pretty easy. Thanks, Ike. Now maybe you don't agree with Ike. Maybe you think this line lines up more with the marking above it, and you think it's 3.85. Well, that's your opinion. No big deal. The big thing is that you get a hundredths place reading out of the caliper measurement that you make. Time for you to try some examples on your own. I want you to pause the video and try these next examples on your own real quick. When you think you have it, go ahead and press play, and the solution will be worked out for you. Let's look at an actual caliper and try to read an actual caliper. Now these are just like the ones you're going to use in the lab. Please read the bottom scale, not the top scale. We want centimeters, not inches. So here we go. Here is the reference line we are looking at on our caliper. It is between 5 and 6. The 5 is kind of hidden by the window, but I think we can assume we know it's there. So this is 5 point something. So that reference line there looks to be between 0.7 and 0.8. 0.7 and 0.8. Well, so that means our next digit should be a 7. So then we have to find the marking on the caliper that lines up with the line above it. And all of these first few are way offset. Then we're getting a little closer. That one's pretty close. Okay, so is that one. So is that one. Those are all pretty close. Okay, if I'm going to read it, I'd say that's the one that's lined up most evenly with the marking above it, and that would be another 7 in the hundredths place then, so 5.77. But maybe you think it's 5.76. Maybe that's how you read it, or maybe you even think it's 5.78. That's okay. It's up to your eyes to determine what the measurement is. As long as you have a hundredths place value, you're okay on your caliper reading. All right, let's see if Ike can read an actual caliper. So here's your reference line, Ike. What's the first digit going to be?
3.
Very good. That's reference lines between 3 and 4, so that first digit should be a 3. Okay, use your reference line again. What's your next digit going to be?
4.
Okay, very good. That is between 0.4 and 0.5, so our next digit should be a 4. And then which marking lines up with the line above it?
That one.
Okay, that's pretty dang close. If you're going to go with that one, that's good. So what would the last number be?
2.
Okay, so what's the value of your measurement?
3.42.
Very good, Ike. You're a natural. All right, once again, let's say you don't agree with Ike. Maybe you think the third line is the one that lines up with it. Maybe you think it's 3.43. Not a big deal. As long as you have a hundredths place, you're using the caliper correctly. Time for you to try a couple actual caliper examples on your own. Make sure to pause the video and try these out. When you think you have it, push play, and you can see if your answers are correct.